I was sitting down to play a totally normal game of Hades when...
Ah, not the content warlock.
That's right, it's me, the content warlock, Tim Tuttons. Reduce this gamer's setup to a mouse with 2 buttons. Oh, and no dashing either.
That was weird, but I guess I have to beat Hades using only a 2-button mouse. Let's get started. Okay, we immediately hit our first problem. No joystick, D-pad, or WASD means we can't walk. And the Warlock said no dashing, so that's out as well. Thankfully, there is an option for us. The special ability on the Achilles Spear. With 1 button, you can throw your spear out, then warp to it. So I'll bind that to left click. Achilles is actually the only aspect that can complete this challenge, but I'll get back to that later. Okay, great, so we can move, immediately bringing us to problem number 2. We have to interact with boons and doors, so that means our right click has to be bound to the interact button, and that means we've bound both of our keys before exiting chamber 1. Let's continue! From a build perspective, I really enjoy these restrictive challenges because they force me to interact with the game in ways I usually wouldn't. As a speedrunner, playing Achilles usually means that I want to get the flurry jab Daedalus hammer, then dash strike my way through each room, but since options like attacking or dashing are all removed, I get to stretch my creative muscles. Starting off with Poseidon Special is questionable. The knockback effect is really unpredictable and makes hitting enemies with my Raging Rush attack kind of difficult because the spear toss was pushing them out of range. But the upside is that Poseidon has some great secondary boons and works really well with other gods. This fountain room shows off some of the odd quirks about having to use Raging Rush as our only movement ability. You have to position yourself just right in order to land in the spot that lets you pick up the boon. Then our mini boss was Zeus, which is fantastic because it has the potential to combo perfectly with the 2 gods we already have, Poseidon and Demeter. And just before the Furies fight, I saw another Poseidon, which gave me Sea Storm. Now, in addition to the Poseidon damage, every time I throw my spear, enemies will be hit with a bolt from Zeus. And this is exactly the kind of damage doubling that we're going to need since we have to rely solely on special for all of our damage. Tisiphone is by far the hardest of the 3 Furies for this challenge. There's something about her attack patterns combined with the stilted movement of having to wait for the spear throw to charge. It just makes it super easy to get shotgunned by her attacks, but thanks to Sea Storm, I made it through fast enough to not lose any of my lives. And then it was on to Asphodel, a place where having limited control of how far and how quickly you can move is an absolute nightmare. My spear felt like it was designed specifically to make me land in lava. I even asked the content warlock if he was doing this on purpose, but he said, nah. Just game better, kid. I saw my second Hermes and was rewarded with bad news, which is great news because due to the way the boon is coded, it increases all damage by 50%, not just the cast damage like the text would have you believe. Remember how I was scared about the knockback on Poseidon Special? Well, in the 4 Witches mini-boss, it really started causing trouble. Usually, I can use a Megara summon to peel off the armor on all 4 Witches, then just do a little bit of cleanup afterwards, but since my special attack was my only source of damage, I had to navigate a room with more lava than actual floor while the witches constantly bounced away from each attack. It was a nightmare room, but I was rewarded with Razor Shoals, which is great because it's a dot, or damage over time effect. So even in moments where I needed to stop attacking to reposition myself or get out of danger, the enemies will still be taking damage. I picked up Breaking Wave from Poseidon just before the Lernie fight. It wouldn't be immediately useful since Lernie heads don't bounce around from knockback, but it will really shine later on in Elysium and Styx. Speaking of the Lernie fight, I got the Orange Head Lernie, which isn't the worst, but she does spit lots of lava onto the ground, making my movement more treacherous than I'd like. And the side heads she spawns in have a really bad habit of making me dash directly into the lava to keep up the damage on them. But with some careful maneuvering, I made it through. Then it was on to Elysium, and outside of the fact that swordsmen are a real pain to deal with, because anytime I got close to them, I would get slashed by their swords for 10 damage, this biome was relatively uneventful. I got a Patroclus room, which I was in dire need of to replenish my Death Defiances. Oh yeah, and I picked up Cold Fusion, the Zeus and Demeter duo boon, turning Static Discharge from Zeus into another dot. The Heroes fight is the part of this run that I was most scared of. Having to deal with 2 different enemies that both do a ton of damage with each attack was terrifying when my only option for movement is 1 spear throw at a time. but thankfully the build had come together nicely, and I had enough damage to overpower them without losing any death defiances, and I was going to need as many lives as possible for the Hades fight. Then it was on to Styx, the biome that makes Achilles Spear the only possible option for this challenge. Sure, there are other weapons that give you movement outside of dashing, the Bull Rush on the shield being the most obvious example, but this gap, this tiny little gap between platforms, can only be crossed if you can dash or if you have the Achilles Spear to teleport over the top of it. And then it was time for the fight of the century. In the left corner, Mouse, and in the right corner, Rat. Mouse versus Rat, Rat versus Mouse. Who will win in this epic battle of minuscule proportions? Breaking Wave was keeping the tiny rat up against the ropes, but then a poison counterattack took the pressure off. Thankfully, the button to drink from the well is the interact button, so the poison wasn't the end of this fight. Then all Lat had to do was line up the final shot, and boom goes the dynamite. That vermin was extinguished, proving that you can beat Hades with only a 2-button mouse without dashing. Oh wait, that's not the end? Oh yeah, the Hades fight. Honestly, I struggle with how to present the Hades fight in these challenge videos. You would think that the culmination of all the boons over the course of the run would somehow be more exciting against the final boss, but it has this habit of always just looking the same, no matter what build you have. But I can say, in this challenge in particular, because I only can move in a flat plane, and the exact distance of my spear throw is hard to make consistent, Hades' laser attack does get scary again. It even took a couple of my death defiances, but thanks to seeing Patroclus earlier and not losing lives to the heroes or the tiny vermin, I had enough health to spare and actually completed the mouse-only challenge.